I stood in the emergency room watching a paramedic inject epinephrine into my 6-month-old daughter's thigh, while her oxygen saturation dropped to 87%, and all I could think was I let this happen. I trusted the wrong person with the most precious thing in my life, and she almost killed her. That ER visit changed everything. It forced me to confront a truth I'd been avoiding for months. Sometimes the biggest danger to your child doesn't come from strangers or accidents. Sometimes it comes from family. From someone who's supposed to love them unconditionally. From someone who thinks their experience trumps your authority as a mother. My name is Sarah Miller, and this is the story of how I learned to set boundaries. Even when it meant going to war with my own mother-in-law. Even when everyone told me I was overreacting. Even when my own husband didn't have my back. Before I tell you what happened, please hit that subscribe button right now. If you've ever struggled with family members who won't respect your parenting decisions, or if you're a mom who's been made to feel crazy for setting boundaries, this story is for you. You're not alone, and you're not overreacting. Trust me on that. Let me back up and introduce myself properly. I'm 39 years old, and I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood with my husband Mark. He's 41 and our daughter Emma, who just turned 6 months old. We're that typical middle-class family you'd see at Target on a Saturday morning. The ones loading up on diapers and baby food and those pouches of organic applesauce that cost way too much. Mark and I have been married for 7 years. We both work full-time because, let's be real, that's what you do when you've got a mortgage and student loans, and a baby who grows out of clothes every 3 weeks. I'm a marketing coordinator at a small firm downtown. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills. Mark manages a hardware store across town. Between us, we make enough to be comfortable, but not enough that daycare costs don't make me want to cry when I look at our bank account. And that's the thing about having a baby in America. The minute you go back to work, you're faced with this impossible choice. Do you spend $1,500 a month on daycare, which is basically a second mortgage? Do you quit your job and lose half your household income? Do you piece together some complicated arrangement with family members and part-time sitters, and hope it all holds together? When I was pregnant, Mark and I researched every daycare center within a 20-mile radius. We put Emma's name on 4 different waiting lists, while I was still in my second trimester. Every single one told us the same thing 12 to 18 months before an opening. One place actually laughed when I asked if they had infant spots available. "You should have called when you found out you were pregnant," the director said. Like I was supposed to know that at 8 weeks along. So there we were, 3 months before my maternity leave ended, with no childcare plan and mounting panic. That's when Mark's mother, Linda, made her offer. Linda is 65, retired from working as a secretary at an elementary school for 30 years. She's been waiting for grandchildren since Mark and I sent out our wedding invitations, dropping hints at every holiday gathering, every birthday dinner. You know the type. Pointed looks at my wine glass, comments about my biological clock. When Emma was born, Linda was over the moon. She showed up at the hospital with an enormous teddy bear and a gift bag full of pink onesies, crying happy tears, taking about 100 photos to post on Facebook. I'll admit, it was sweet. I felt lucky that Emma would have a grandmother who was so excited about her. About 2 weeks after we brought Emma home, while I was drowning in postpartum exhaustion and panicking about our childcare situation, Linda made her pitch. "I'd love to help out with the baby," she said during one of her daily visits. She was holding Emma, bouncing her gently. "I'm retired, I've got nothing but time. And why would you pay some stranger when family can do it at no cost?" I looked at Mark, and I saw the relief wash over his face. Childcare from someone who loves Emma, without the $1,500 monthly hit to our budget? It seemed like the answer to all our problems. "That would be amazing, Linda," I said, already mentally calculating how much money we'd save. "Are you sure you're up for it? 2 full days a week is a big commitment." "Oh, please," Linda said, waving her hand dismissively. "I raised Mark, didn't I? And he turned out just fine. This will be easy." Looking back, I should have paid more attention to that comment. Not the words themselves, but the tone. The implication that her experience raising one child in the 1980s gave her authority over how I raised mine in 2025. But I was desperate and tired and relieved. So we agreed. Linda would come to our house every Tuesday and Thursday, 8 a.m. until 5:30 p.m. 2 full days without childcare expenses. Problem solved. Except it wasn't. The first few weeks were fine. Linda showed up on time, always cheerful, always ready to take Emma from my arms so I could finish getting ready for work. I created a detailed schedule: feeding times, nap times, tummy time, everything Emma's pediatrician recommended, and I kept it posted on the refrigerator with colorful magnets, so Linda couldn't possibly miss it. I'm naturally a planner. I like structure and routines and knowing what to expect. And with Emma, after weeks of trial and error, I'd finally found a schedule that worked. She was sleeping through the night, taking regular naps, eating at consistent times. It felt like I'd finally figured out this whole motherhood thing. Then Linda started making her own adjustments. The first incident happened in week 3. I came home from work on a Thursday evening to find Emma screaming in Linda's arms. Not just fussing, full-blown crying, her little face, red and blotchy, that heartbreaking wail that activates every maternal nerve in your body. "What happened?" I said, immediately reaching for Emma. "Is she okay?" "Oh, she's just being fussy," Linda said, handing her over with a shrug. "She fought her afternoon nap, so I let her stay up. She'll sleep better tonight." My stomach dropped. "You kept her up?" "Linda, her afternoon nap is crucial. It's right there on the schedule," I said. "Schedules," Linda said, and she actually rolled her eyes. "Babies don't need to be on such a strict routine, Sarah. They'll sleep when they're tired." That's how I did it with Mark. I wanted to explain that all the current research shows babies thrive on consistency, that overtired infants actually sleep worse, that her pediatrician had been very specific about maintaining the schedule. But Emma was crying, and I was exhausted, and Linda was already gathering her purse to leave. "Thanks for watching her," I managed to say. After she left, I spent 3 hours trying to soothe an overtired, overstimulated baby. Emma wouldn't nurse, wouldn't take a bottle, just cried and cried. By the time Mark got home from work, I was sitting in the dark nursery, rocking Emma and crying myself. "Hey, what's going on?" Mark said, his voice soft with concern. "Your mom didn't follow the schedule," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She kept Emma up during nap time, and now she's overtired and miserable." Mark sighed. I recognized that sigh, the one that meant he didn't want to deal with conflict between his wife and his mother. "Mom's doing us a huge favor, Sarah. She's helping us without asking for a dime. Emma's just having a rough day," Mark said. I bit my tongue hard enough to taste blood. "Okay," I said quietly. But it wasn't okay, and it was about to get so much worse. Over the next month, the violations piled up. Linda stopped following the schedule entirely. She'd feed Emma whenever she decided the baby looked hungry, ignoring the timing I'd carefully established with our pediatrician. She'd skip nap time if Emma seemed too alert. Every Tuesday and Thursday became a gamble. Would I come home to a content baby or a screaming, overtired mess? I tried talking to Linda. I really did. I sent her text messages with links to articles from the American Academy of Pediatrics. I printed out sheets from Emma's last checkup showing the recommended feeding schedule. I even laminated a new schedule and hung it at eye level on the refrigerator. Linda ignored all of it. The formula incident was my first real warning sign. I came home one Tuesday to find Linda feeding Emma a bottle of a completely different brand than the one I'd left prepared in the fridge. "Linda, what is that?" I said, picking up an unfamiliar canister from the counter. "Oh, I stopped at CVS on my lunch break and picked up a better brand," she said cheerfully. "This is what I used with Mark back in the day. Much cheaper than that fancy organic formula you waste money on." My hands started shaking. Emma's pediatrician specifically recommended this formula because she has reflux. You can't just switch formulas without consulting the doctor first. It says so right in her patient portal notes, I said. "Doctors," Linda scoffed. "They recommend the most expensive option because they get kickbacks. I've been doing this longer than these young pediatricians, Sarah. Trust me, Emma's fine." But Emma wasn't fine. She was gassy and uncomfortable all evening, pulling her little legs up to her chest and crying. I spent half the night walking her around our bedroom, trying to soothe her while Mark snored peacefully beside us. The next morning, I logged into Emma's patient portal and sent a message to the pediatrician's nurse. At 9:42 a.m., the nurse replied, confirming what I already knew. "You don't switch infant formulas without medical guidance, especially for a baby with documented reflux." I showed Mark the portal message that evening. "See? Your mom could have made Emma really sick," I said. "But she didn't," Mark said, barely looking up from his phone. "Emma's fine now, right? Mom was just trying to save us money. She meant well." Then came the day I left work early to grab a file I'd forgotten. I walked through our front door around 2 p.m. and heard the television blaring from the living room. When I walked in, I found Emma in her bouncer, positioned directly in front of the TV, some daytime court show playing at maximum volume. "Linda," I called out, trying not to yell. She appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Oh, you're home early," Linda said. "Why is Emma watching TV?" The pediatrician said to avoid screen media before 18 months. "Video chat aside," I said, pointing at the screen. Linda laughed. She actually laughed at me. "Oh, Sarah, you believe everything those doctors tell you. A little TV never hurt anyone. I had Mark watching Sesame Street at this age. He's perfectly fine, isn't he?" Linda said. I unplugged the TV without another word, picked up Emma, and held her close. My daughter's eyes had that glazed look, unfocused and strange. I felt sick. That night, I tried one more time with Mark. I sat him down at our kitchen table after Emma was asleep and laid out everything: the ignored schedule, the unauthorized formula change, the screen time, all of it. "Mark, this isn't about your mom being mean or neglectful," I said, choosing my words carefully. "It's about her not respecting our parenting decisions. These aren't arbitrary rules I made up. They're based on our pediatrician's recommendations and current research." "I know you're stressed," Mark said, scrolling through his phone. "But we can't exactly complain about help we're not paying for. Mom's doing things her way, and honestly, Emma seems happy." "You worry too much," Mark said. That's when I realized something terrifying. When push came to shove, Mark would always choose his mother over me. I was on my own. But I had no idea how dangerous that would become. The Tuesday that shattered everything started like every other Tuesday. I barely slept the night before, anxiety twisting in my stomach about leaving Emma with Linda. But what choice did I have? We couldn't afford to lose my income, and every daycare in a 30-mile radius had waiting lists stretching into next year. Before I left for work, I went through everything with Linda one more time. "She eats at 9 a.m., noon, and 3 p.m., I said, pointing to each time on the schedule. "Her bottles are already made up in the fridge. Don't give her anything else. No new foods, no snacks, nothing without calling me first." "Okay, I've got it, dear," Linda said with that tight smile I'd grown to dread. "Stop worrying so much. You're going to give yourself an ulcer." I kissed Emma's soft cheek, breathed in her baby smell one more time, and forced myself to walk out the door. I made it until 2:07 p.m. That's when my cell phone rang with Linda's name on the screen. She never called me during the day. "Hello?" I answered, already standing up from my desk. "Sarah, honey, don't panic," Linda said, and her voice was wrong, tight and high-pitched. "But I think maybe you should come home. Emma's having some kind of reaction to something." Everything else disappeared. My coworkers, my computer screen, the presentation I'd been working on. None of it mattered. "What kind of reaction?" I said. I was already grabbing my purse, my keys. "What are her symptoms?" "Her face is swelling up, and she's got red bumps everywhere. Hives, I think they're called. And she's making this wheezing sound when she breathes. I'm sure it's probably nothing serious, but," Linda said. I said, "Did you call 911? I was running now, through the office, past my boss who called after me. "Well, no, I didn't want to make a big fuss," Linda said. "Call them right now, Linda." I was shouting, not caring who heard me. "Call 911 and tell them your granddaughter is having an allergic reaction. Do it now." "I'm 15 minutes away," I said. I don't remember the drive home. I must have run red lights, gone 80 and 45 zones. I called Mark, barely able to form words through my panic. "Something's wrong with Emma. Meet me at home. Now," I said. When I burst through our front door, I found Linda pacing the living room with Emma in her arms. My baby's face was grotesquely swollen, her eyes nearly shut from the inflammation, angry welts covering every inch of visible skin. And that sound, that terrible wheezing coming from her chest. No baby should ever make that sound. I grabbed Emma from Linda's arms. "What did you give her? What did she eat?" I said. "Just some egg," Linda said, her hands twisting together. I scrambled up some egg from the fridge. She seemed hungry after her bottle, and I thought she could use some protein. "It's just egg, Sarah. It's healthy." The room tilted. "You gave her egg?" "Linda, she's 6 months old. You don't introduce a common allergen without parental consent and without being prepared to monitor for reactions." I said. "How was I supposed to know she was allergic?" Linda said, tears streaming down her face now. "You never told me she couldn't have eggs. I told you not to give her any new foods." I was screaming now, my daughter wheezing in my arms. "I told you to call me first." This is exactly why you don't just feed a baby random foods without asking. The ambulance arrived, sirens splitting the air. 2 paramedics rushed in with equipment. One of them, a woman maybe in her 30s, took Emma from my arms and immediately laid her on our living room floor. Severe allergic reaction, she said to her partner, clipping a pulse oximeter onto Emma's tiny finger. O2 sat is 87%. Prep epi. I watched them inject epinephrine into my daughter's thigh. I watched the numbers on the monitor slowly tick upward. 89. 91. 93. I watched the hives begin to fade just a little, watched her breathing ease slightly. She's responding to the epi, the female paramedic said. But we need to transport. Allergic reactions can be biphasic. She could have a second wave. I rode in the ambulance, holding Emma's hand, watching the monitor. The paramedic kept taking vitals, recording everything. At the hospital, we were rushed into a bay in the pediatric ER. A doctor who looked barely older than me examined Emma, asked rapid-fire questions about timing, symptoms, what she'd eaten. Your mother-in-law gave her egg? The doctor said, making notes in her tablet. Yes, I said. Without my permission. Without asking. Without even telling me she was planning to introduce solid foods. The doctor's expression tightened. Introducing a major allergen requires parental consent and monitoring. This could have been fatal if you hadn't gotten here quickly, the doctor said. Fatal. That word echoed in my head while they kept Emma for observation, monitoring her vitals, making sure the reaction didn't rebound. They prescribed an EpiPen Jr., 0.15 milligrams, and told me to carry it everywhere. They sent us home with 2 EpiPen Jr. injectors and a trainer, I said to Mark when he arrived, plus a printed action plan to keep with the pens. They gave me papers about food allergies, about reading labels, about emergency action plans. At the registration desk on our way out, they told me my copay was $150. My hands shook as I handed over my credit card. $150 to save my daughter's life because my mother-in-law thought she knew better. The next morning, I messaged the pediatrician through the patient portal and uploaded photos of the hives. Within an hour, they'd sent back an allergist referral and updated Emma's chart with an allergy flag. Mark arrived at the hospital about an hour after we got there. I could see the fear on his face as he rushed into Emma's bay, saw her hooked up to monitors, and 4 in her tiny arm. Is she okay? Mark whispered, his voice breaking. She will be, I said. They gave her epinephrine. The reaction's under control now. We sat in silence, watching our daughter sleep peacefully for the first time all day, her breathing finally normal. Then Linda appeared in the doorway. She looked destroyed. Makeup streaked down her face, eyes swollen from crying, clutching her purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. When she saw Emma in the hospital bed, she made this awful sobbing sound. Sarah, I am so sorry, Linda started. I never meant for this to get out, I said. My voice was quiet, deadly calm. Every ounce of rage I'd been swallowing for months crystallized into 2 words. Get out of this room right now, I said. Sarah, please, Linda said, reaching out like she was going to touch my arm. Don't, I said, standing up. Don't touch me. Don't come near my daughter. Get out. Mom, Mark said quietly. Maybe you should. No, Mark, I said, turning to face both of them. Your mother almost killed our daughter today. Do you understand that? The doctor said it could have been fatal. Emma could have died because your mother decided she knew better than us, better than Emma's pediatrician, better than basic food safety guidelines. It was an accident, Linda sobbed. I didn't know she was allergic. I was just trying to help. You were trying to do whatever you wanted, I said, my voice rising now. You've been doing it for months. Ignoring the schedule, changing the formula, putting her in front of the TV. Every single time I asked you to follow our rules, you dismissed me. Every time I expressed concern, you told me I was overreacting. You treated my instructions like they were suggestions, like my role as Emma's mother was just a formality. I stepped closer to Linda, and she actually backed up. I am Emma's mother, I said, enunciating each word. Not you. Me. I make the decisions about her care. I set the rules. I decide what she eats, when she sleeps, what activities are safe. And if you cannot respect that, if you cannot follow basic instructions, then you will never be alone with my daughter again. You can't keep her from me, Linda said, her voice going sharp despite the tears. I'm her grandmother. Watch me, I said. I will do whatever it takes to keep Emma safe. I will protect her from anyone who puts her in danger, even family, even you. Linda looked at Mark, waiting for him to intervene, to smooth things over. like he always did. But Mark was staring at Emma, at the monitors, tracking her vitals, at the fourth taped to her arm. I saw something shift in his face. "Mom," Mark said quietly. "Sarah's right." Linda's mouth fell open. "Mark," Linda said. "She's right," Mark repeated, louder now. "You weren't following the rules. You thought you knew better. And our daughter ended up in the emergency room because of it. I think you need to leave," Mark said. "Mark, please," Linda said. "Leave, Mom," Mark said, his voice firm in a way I'd never heard before. "We'll talk later. But right now, you need to go." After Linda left, Mark came and stood beside me. We both looked down at Emma, sleeping peacefully despite everything. "I'm sorry," Mark said softly. "I should have supported you from the beginning. I should have set boundaries with her months ago. She's my mom. I couldn't see what she was doing." "I know," I said. "But Mark, things have to change. I need to know you're on my side. When it comes to Emma's safety, we have to be a team." "We will be," Mark promised. "I get it now. I really do." Emma came home from the hospital the next evening, with a prescription for an EpiPen Jr. and an allergy action plan that I immediately posted on our refrigerator. We had a diagnosis now: severe IgE-mediated egg allergy. The allergist we'd been referred to said there was a 50-50 chance she'd outgrow it by age 5. But until then, we needed to avoid all egg products. That meant reading every label, asking about ingredients at restaurants, alerting every caregiver. I learned not to leave the pen in a hot car. "Temperature matters," I said to Mark, as I set up a spot for the injectors in our diaper bag. I took the rest of the week off work. So did Mark. We spent those days on the phone, calling daycares, researching allergy protocols, reading parent reviews. Finally, we found a center called Bright Beginnings that specialized in children with medical needs. They had a strict no outside food policy, staff trained in recognizing allergic reactions, and an allergy flag system where Emma's photo would be posted in every room, with her allergen clearly marked. "We have an opening next week," the director said during our tour. "It's $1,800 a month for full-time care." I didn't even flinch. "We'll take it," I said. Before day one they required a doctor-signed allergy plan and a medication authorization, I said to Mark later, so staff could legally store and use the pen on site. Linda called every single day that week. Mark answered her calls, kept the conversations short. She wanted to visit. She wanted to apologize in person. She wanted another chance. "I'm not ready," I told Mark. "I can't look at her without seeing Emma's face swelling up, without hearing that wheezing sound." "I know," Mark said. "Take all the time you need." But 2 weeks later, Linda showed up at our door on a Saturday morning. Mark had told me she was coming. I'd agreed to the visit, but only on my terms. We sat in the living room. Emma was on her playmat between us, happily gumming a teething ring. Linda looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. "I've done a lot of thinking," Linda said, her voice quiet, "about what happened, about everything leading up to it." I waited, saying nothing. "I realize now that I was trying to relive being a mother," Linda continued. "When Mark grew up and moved out, I felt like I'd lost my identity. When Emma was born, I saw a second chance. But she's not my baby. She's yours. And I didn't respect that." She looked directly at me for the first time. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm truly sorry. I was wrong to ignore your instructions. I was wrong to dismiss your concerns. I was wrong to think my experience was more valid than your authority as Emma's mother. And I'm sorry it took something so serious for me to understand that," Linda said. I glanced at Mark. He gave me a small nod. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You can visit Emma, but you're never alone with her. Not until she's old enough to tell us if something's wrong. And when you visit, there are non-negotiables. You follow our food rules with 0 exceptions. You don't bring food into our house without clearing it with me first. You respect her schedule. You ask before doing anything new with her. Any toy, any activity, anything. Are we absolutely clear?" "Crystal clear," Linda said. "Thank you for giving me a chance to still be part of her life." "I'm not doing it for you," I said. "I'm doing it for Emma." "But Linda, I need you to understand something. If you cross these boundaries again, even once, you're done. No second chances. No explanations. Done." Linda nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand," Linda said. "That was 3 months ago. Emma is 9 months old now, and the change in our lives has been incredible. She started at Bright Beginnings Daycare, and within a week, I knew we'd made the right decision. Every day, I get photo updates through their app: Emma playing with blocks, Emma at music time, Emma napping peacefully in her crib. The daily log reads like clockwork: 12:03 p.m. Bottle 6 ounces, 1:05 to 2:32 nap. They follow her allergy action plan to the letter. Her photo with severe egg allergy is posted in every room. They text me before giving her any new food, even things I've already approved. It costs $1,800 a month, and it's worth every single penny. An explanation of benefits hit our mailbox a week later. Numbers that made my stomach drop, I said to Mark when we reviewed the ER charges. But Emma was safe. That's what mattered. Linda visits every Sunday afternoon now. She sits on the floor and plays with Emma, reads her board books, helps her practice pulling up on furniture. She asks permission before giving Emma anything, even water. She checks the schedule before planning activities. She follows every rule. Our relationship will never be what I once hoped for. There's a formality between us now, a careful distance. She doesn't call me honey anymore or offer unsolicited advice. She asks instead of assuming, requests instead of declaring. But here's the thing I'll take: careful and respectful over warm and dangerous any day of the week. Mark and I started couples therapy about 6 weeks after the ER incident. I'd suggested it, expecting resistance, but Mark agreed immediately. I think we need it, Mark admitted. I don't want to make the same mistakes again. Our therapist, Dr. Rodriguez, was a straight shooter, who didn't let either of us hide behind excuses. In our third session, she asked Mark a question that changed everything. Mark, what do you think would have happened if Linda had continued caring for Emma, without these new boundaries in place? Drive, Rodriguez said. Mark was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I think something even worse might have happened. The egg allergy could have been more severe. Emma could have. He couldn't finish the sentence. So why was it so hard for you to support Sarah's concerns before the ER visit? Dr. Rodriguez asked. Because conflict with my mom has never been an option, Mark said. Growing up, what she said was law. You didn't question her. You didn't disagree with her. You certainly didn't tell her she was wrong. It was easier to convince myself that Sarah was overreacting than to confront my mother. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. That's a common pattern in families where boundaries were never modeled. But Mark, you're not a child anymore. You're a father, and your primary responsibility is to protect your daughter, even if that means disappointing your mother, Dr. Rodriguez said. We worked on communication strategies, conflict resolution, how to present a united front. Dr. Rodriguez taught us phrases like, "That doesn't work for our family, and this is a non-negotiable for us." She helped Mark understand that loving his mother and setting boundaries with her weren't mutually exclusive. Last week, Linda suggested changing Emma's bedtime routine during one of her visits. Before I could respond, Mark spoke up. Mom, Sarah and Emma's pediatrician worked out that routine together, Mark said calmly. It works for Emma, so we're not changing it. It was a small moment, but to me, it meant everything. They say it takes a village to raise a child. I've heard that phrase 1,000 times, seen it on coffee mugs and nursery wall art and parenting blogs. But here's what I've learned over these past few months. You get to choose who's in your village. You get to decide who's trustworthy and who's not. You get to set the boundaries that keep your child safe. I look at Emma now. She's learned to wave this week, and it's the cutest thing I've ever seen. And I think about how close I came to losing her. How I almost let politeness and family obligation, and the desire to keep the peace put my daughter in actual danger. Never again. Last Sunday, as Linda was leaving, she paused at our front door. You're a really good mother, Sarah, Linda said quietly. Emma's lucky to have you. I didn't know what to say, so I just said, thank you. Being a mother means making hard choices. It means having uncomfortable conversations. It means protecting your child even when the threat comes from people who are supposed to love them. It means setting boundaries and never apologizing for them. I am Emma's mother. I make the decisions. I set the rules. I protect her with everything I have. And I will never apologize for that again. If you've had to set boundaries with family members about your children, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. Did your partner back you up? How did you handle it? What advice would you give to someone going through something similar? Let's support each other, because boundary setting is hard, but it's also necessary. Thanks for listening to my story. And remember, boundaries aren't cruel. Boundaries are protection. Boundaries are love.